Hey guys, this is the Meet the Attorney episode. And in this Meet the Attorney episode, I'm going to introduce you to a type of attorney that I have not introduced you to before. As you know, I love to bring value to you. I love to give you stuff that you've never heard of before. And this episode is definitely going to fit that bill because I'm going to introduce you to an attorney that focuses on IT, software protection, crypto, everything. If you're even thinking about anything like that and you're thinking, you may not need an attorney for, think again, because I'm going to introduce you to someone that's going to blow your mind. So with that, enjoy the episode.
Hello and welcome to Marketing Solutions for Local Law Firms, the podcast that provides you with all the latest digital marketing tools, tips, and strategies you will need to implement in order to stay ahead of your competition. If you are looking to substantially increase your caseload in the next 6 months, this is the podcast for you. And now, here's the host of our show, the local business guy himself, Frank Deming.
Hello, everyone. This is Frank Deming, the local business guy, and welcome to another episode of Marketing Solutions for Local Law Firms. Happy Wednesday. Happy hump day, everyone. I hope you guys are having a rockin' week thus far. Today is Meet the Attorney. I have a special episode today because I'm going to interview someone that I don't think you've ever heard do what he does. And his name is the great David Lopez-Kurtz. What's going on, David?
Hey, Frank, how are you? Thanks for having me.
Hey, I am glad that you are here. I had a pre-recorded introduction to you already, but in your own words, can you introduce yourself? Tell us who you are and what do you do?
Sure. I am an attorney based in Cincinnati, a securities attorney by background and training, and now my practice is focused very much on technology companies, working in Web3 and crypto since 2016, and now increasingly working with companies that are building large language models, more commonly known as AI.
And those are very popular topics, so I'm sure you're a very busy man.
I am. The market is a little bit slow on the whole, but that hasn't really slowed my business at all. And I expect that if the market perks up a little bit over the summer and into the fall, that things are going to get really, really busy.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, AI, that's a big thing these days. Everyone's talking about it. I have clients of mine that reach out to me all the time wanting to know, hey, how can we utilize this thing best? So yeah, you're definitely in the right spot. So the topic of today, David, is it's all about value, which is an interesting topic. And, I just want to dive in a little bit as to, what are we going to talk about here? What does it mean to you in terms of what, first of all, before I even get into that question, what do you mean by it's all about value? What prompted you to want to talk about this in the first place?
Yeah, it's so, as will not surprise any of your listeners, lawyers, good ones, are expensive, but they are a necessary business expense to all companies of any size, from early stage companies to the largest companies in the world. They hire armies and armies and armies of lawyers. And I started to look at my practice, my product, my service from the perspective of it being a high-end good and a high-end service. And one of the things you want when you're in high-end sales is to have the client, the customer, walk away from an interaction feeling good about spending as much money as they did. And the question I asked myself, how do I make sure that happens as often as possible? And the answer I came to after speaking with clients, with other business people, is making sure that there is value in the spend. Business people are not afraid of spending money. They understand that they need to spend money to make money, but they want to make sure that they're spending their money in the right way and in the most efficient way to make sure that they're able to do whatever it is they do at the highest, best, most profitable level.
I got you. It makes sense. So all right. So you said a lot there. Let's dig in a little into it because prior to us hitting record here, you gave me a term that I have never heard of, and it's called alternative legal service provider, which is who you are, correct? If I'm not mistaken, you are alternative.
So it's in addition to wearing the hat of being a practicing attorney, I'm also the CEO and founder of BSL Group, which is an ALSP or alternative legal services provider. What does that mean? It means it's a services company in the legal space that is not a law firm. It's it's a carve out from that. It is it's a corporation. It's not a partnership. There's a lot of things that differentiate it from a technical standpoint from being a law firm. But the biggest thing that differentiates it is a focus and emphasis on investing in technology, investing in efficiency, investing in standardizing and streamlining a lot of the blocking and tackling, the fundamentals of maintaining a robust legal department or compliance department. And in fact, completely handling the outsourced version of some pieces of that puzzle for clients, oftentimes in conjunction with my legal practice, but not always. There are clients that are working explicitly with BSL Group to handle their compliance needs. And, we can work in support of other attorneys and their practices and deals. So the idea is, making sure that the right person at the right price point is doing the work.
Okay. Got it. Now, since we're talking about value, right? It's all about value. I have a 2-part question here. Next, I'm going to, it's going to be 2 questions, so it may be a long answer. So I'm just, and if it's not, that's fine. I'm just assuming. First of all, in terms of value, what does it mean to you in creating value? And second part of that question is, how does, this ALSP thing factor into the value conversation as a whole?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, as a securities lawyer, a lot of what I do is helping people raise money, and there's a right way to raise money, a wrong way to raise money, and you can get yourself into trouble. And at the end of the day, and I'll tell my clients this, I should always be making you more money than you're paying, right? Mm-hmm. And I think that's a very overly simplistic way of thinking about what value is. If I'm getting more out of what I'm putting into than what I put in, that's a pretty good value. But I also think that value can mean feeling like at the end of the day, what you have expended was worth what you are getting in return. It doesn't have to necessarily be X in and Y out precisely to indicate value. You can feel that a cheeseburger was a good value because what you paid for was lined up with the quality of what you got back, the speed of what you got back, the convenience, or the luxury. If it was a higher end Wagyu, bistro burger, whatever it was, value doesn't need to be at any end of or any point of the economic spectrum. It means that from the perspective of the consumer, that it was worth the spend. And so that's how I view value, of making the consumer feel good about what they spent. And remind me the second part of the question.
Second part is that, and how does ALSPs, the alternative legal service provider, how does that factor into the value conversation that we just had?
That is perfect. Thank you. So anyone who has done, and this isn't the kind of legal work that one might think about in terms of, defending a DUI or, I think that's not the world that we play in. But anyone who's bought a company or sold a company or raised money, that there is a lot of administrative work that goes into building out the processes, the systems, the operations that are inherent to doing these things the right way. Along that workflow, there are opportunities to bring non-attorney professionals to bear who, by the nature of their profession, by the nature of their educational background, command a lower compensation scheme, who have a more measured salary point, and therefore can be passed through as a service provider at a more economically digestible rate. And so the goal is, when you're using an ALSP, is that you can use non-lawyers to do legal work, leaving the legal work, the true lawyering legal work, to the attorneys and nothing beyond that. Leave the blocking and tackling to, paralegals, to finance professionals, to compliance professionals, to administrative professionals who can handle different pieces of this workflow at a very high level, because they tend to specialize in their piece of the puzzle. And as a collective of these different pieces of this overall deal machine, you get extremely high-end output, extremely effective and efficient output at a price point that, to my mind, is a value. And I focus on it being a value because it's not inexpensive. This is not a cheap way of doing it. This is not a defective or lesser way of doing it. This is the way that you can do it in a way that is scalable for a company. If you are seeking to do 12 acquisitions in a year, you want to make sure that that's a replicable process for you. If you're planning on setting up internal policies and controls and systems within your company to make sure that you comply with any regulatory frameworks that you live within, you want to make sure that's replicable and scalable. And so by making sure that we have project managers managing projects, that we have administrators doing administration, it makes sure that the spend on your lawyers is going to the lawyering. And this frees up your budget to make sure that you're getting the best possible counsel on any given matter without having to think about making things cheaper. Instead, you get to think about things being the best value possible.
And does your organization supply these other resources that we're talking about here?
That's one of the other nice things about being a little bit outside of the traditional law firm model is, yes, we can work with and have in our, to use the baseball term, we have a bullpen, right? We have professionals that we work with on a deal by deal basis, contractors who come from a number of different disciplines. Working in the Web3 and technology forward space, we might run into the need to have a mathematician or an economist or a full stack developer who works in this specific language model. Any one of these pieces of the puzzle could be essential to the overall success of a given client's immediate demands. By the flexible nature of being outside of a traditional law firm model, we then have the ability to bring those resources to bear, pull them together, and then when combined with a traditional legal engagement, you get a more holistic handling of your matter. And I think this is continued to be highlighted as a really efficient way of attacking things when you're looking at emerging technology, that these companies move fast. There's a lot that needs to be done. It needs to be done right, and it needs to be done yesterday. And so we have an ability to be proactive, especially because of our ability to invest in things like internal AI resources so that we are extremely effective and efficient when it comes to our time.
Interesting. So, there's a lot of, it's a lot of moving parts, basically. So, it's not a simple thing. It's a lot of moving parts is what you're talking about here. That's what
it is. Anyway. It is. And there's no hiding that. I think anybody who goes through this process realizes that there's a bunch of different moving parts. And what we aim to provide is more of those parts under the same hood. So instead of putting the onus on the client to pull together all of their different resources, we're in a position to say, hey, client, this is your goal. Here are the resources that we know, that we vet, that we've trusted, and we can pull them together to offer what, from your perspective as a consumer, is a single product, but in reality is the result of years of conversations and networking and relationship building to be able to pull those resources to bear for a given workflow. And I think that also adds, we talked about value of the cheeseburger, right? Convenience. It is what it needs to be, in time, on time, every time. And by having those things internalized to a degree, that allows for a higher level of consistency and the speed.
Gotcha. And then out of curiosity, how does bringing in the right resources at the right time, how does that impact the clients that you work with?
it makes a huge difference when, and I'll even supplement what you're asking there. What you see a lot of the time when it comes to engaging with legal counsel is that clients put it off as long as they can because it's an expensive thing that they don't want to pay for right now because it's going to hurt when they spend the money. By having varying degrees of resources that can be brought to bear, whether it is somebody who is more of an administrative level professional that's making sure that your corporate filings are all done on whatever basis they need to be done, you have this ongoing communication line. So it allows for a responsiveness that isn't otherwise necessarily possible without a significant financial investment. And to answer directly the question, it makes an incalculable difference to get the right people on the right deal in time to make a difference. You always want to be able to buy as much lead time as possible. We always want to be able to move very, very quickly, but we don't want to be forced to move any faster than is reasonable, safe, and efficient. Because at the end of the day, you can have things done right, you can have them done fast, you can have them done cheap, but you can only have two. And doing it right is non-negotiable. So at the end of the day, for clients, the question is, do you want it done, fast or cheap? And if you come and engage the right team sooner and you have a little bit more lead time, it's going to be a more cost-effective option for you than if it comes to the 11th hour and we need these things done tomorrow. We need them done the next day. We'll still get it done, but you're going to require the undivided attention of more senior people, which is going to be a more expensive prospect.
Right. Now, one of the things that we have in common is, marketing, as you know, I mean, we do more digital marketing. It can be expensive depending on where you are. Most of my marketing, though, the expense really depends on where you are. Like if you're in New York City, it's going to be a lot more expensive than if you're in Idaho, because of just the nature of the beast. But I was always told, I'm a huge advocate of business coaching. And I was always told by my business coach, Frank, you got to learn how to meet your clients where they are. In other words, you got to understand, where they are financially, et cetera, and all that. Now, do you do that? Do you meet your clients where they are, or is that not something that you think it's worth in your line of work?
I mean, for me personally, I think it's foundational to my practice. I mean, I tend to, I'm not exclusively in this boat, but I tend to work with companies more than the investors in those companies. And that changes your mindset. It doesn't preclude you from one doing the other, but people that work with entrepreneurs have a tendency, the ones who are good at it, have a tendency to adopt an entrepreneurial mindset and to think about things the way that their clients think about things. And I've strived to do that over the course of my legal career. I mean, it helps that this was not my first career. I came into the practice of law having done a number of different things beforehand. And so that provides me a degree of context to understand what it is to be a working person who's looking to build something, being understandably skeptical of things like a tremendously high ticket legal service provider.
We'll be back after a quick break.
Hey guys, I hope you guys are enjoying today's content. While I have you on here, I want to introduce you to a promo that we have going on for the spring of 2024 for all legal practices throughout the U.S. I have an outstanding offer that we've never been able to offer before, but we want to do it because you have been an avid listener. We're only promoting this to people who listen to the show. So if you're an attorney and you are an avid listener to the show and you're thinking about possibly opening your own practice, you want to pay attention to this announcement. We are offering a full website with hosting, SSL certificate, online booking service, online appointment management, and more, and much, much more, with a 1-year maintenance, all for $2,250. That's $2,250 one-time fee, and you have a full-fledged website. If you want to know more about this, just give us a call at 888-416-7752, or send us an email at info@lbmsllc.com. Just make sure that you mentioned that you heard it on the show, and we'll definitely get you that discount. So with that, I'm going to bring you back to the content. Do you primarily work with tech companies, or is there any other types of entrepreneurs that you work with?
That's my bread and butter. Are companies that are specifically ones that are looking in emerging technological fields, and anyone that looks like it's going to be highly regulated. That's my sweet spot. So working with, using the biggest term possible, Web3 companies, but known previously as crypto or NFT or any of these things in this evolution over the last, it's been in this space for 7 years now, which is a long time in this area. And then now we're seeing with large language models, with AI, with the call of recently an open letter was calling for world leaders to consider AI a threat to human extinction on the level of a nuclear war, of its potential to eradicate human life. It's like, okay, well, I'm going to go ahead and call that a pretty high stakes industry, and one that might be facing a complicated regulatory regime. And so that's where I found myself. But at the end of the day, I'm a securities lawyer. I help people raise money. So if somebody is building a popsicle factory and they need to raise the capital, I'm still a good person to talk to, and we'll make sure that you're handling all of the corporate things you need to handle, all of the securities regulations that you need to navigate, and doing that. But in terms of my day-to-day work, I'd say it's very much defined by cutting edge technology.
Awesome. I'm not a mind reader there, David, but I am going to go out on a limb and say that people want to know the answer to this next question. If I was to be reading their minds right now as they're listening to us talking, they want to know the answer to this question. What is your take on where we're going with AI?
I'll speak from the perspective of my own profession, because I think it's one of the ones that people have been really curious about. Will AI be the end of lawyers as we know them? And yes. I mean, I think at this point, AI will not replace lawyers. Lawyers who know how to use AI will replace lawyers who don't. That's what's going to happen. It's going to be a generational shift on how do you leverage this technology, in the same way that it got to the point where if you were a lawyer who didn't use email, it was weird and people wouldn't hire you anymore. Because there was a point for when email was first introduced, law firms were very slow to embrace that technology. From a client confidentiality standpoint, from a security standpoint, law firms are very conservative, and rightfully so. That is what is anticipated of them when you engage them as a client. However, there comes a point where the world has changed, and so too must the legal practitioners within it. And I think that's going to be the case with these large language models. They're not going to be in a position as a business proposition to have clients be willing to pay for things that could have been done in moments leveraging an LLM, as opposed to an hour without. That's just going to be a change in the market, and lawyers are going to have to learn how to embrace the technology within their security, technical, other confines that are inherent to the practice. And that's one piece of technology that we've been developing internally at BSL Group, is how do we build our own internal large language model, which I think is the more precise term for what we're considering to be AI at this point. It's a language anticipatory model. It's not truly an intelligence, but that's a whole conversation unto itself on kind of a philosophical level. But literally, how do you do that while being sensitive to the sensitive nature of client information? And that's something that we're navigating, to be able to build that and isolate the information from external sources while still being able to leverage the power of something like GPT-4, the most recent LLM from OpenAI. How can we leverage that with an API connection while still maintaining the sensitivity and the confidentiality inherent to client information. And that's a process that we're developing internally. And I think that on the horizon, implementing that process, implementing that kind of model for other firms is likely to be a revenue source for us once we have mastered how to do this and do it at a level that will be data security compliant and certified.
Yep.
Other firms will need to catch up with it, and they'll be looking to their contemporaries on how to do it. And by being outside of a law firm, it's not looking to a direct competitor, it's looking to someone who understands your industry, but isn't exactly you, who can come in and support an internal IT team of how do we get our people up to literal speed to be able to work in a world that's just getting faster.
Right. Gotcha. It's funny, you said something there earlier, which it's true. Usually the attorney, that this space is the last thing to adapt to, change and all that kind of stuff, like email. Because I remember when I first started marketing the lawyers, there was still a few stragglers out there that said, nah, I get everything word of mouth. I don't want to be on the internet, yada, yada, yada. It was kind of interesting. But on that topic, since you are, you're an attorney that's more on the tech side, I'm just kind of curious about something. How does a law firm modernize their practice? I mean, let's cut to the chase there.
Yeah, I mean, there's a number of ways that it can be done, and you see, particularly at the larger end of the spectrum, the firms that have the financial resources to make investments internally in technology, you see a heightened leveraging of things like with e-discovery, right? And how do you use technology to review millions and millions and millions of documents, and then have a secondary review of actual practitioners, so that you don't solely have young lawyers locked in a windowless room reviewing boxes of documents. The answer to a lot of them was either hiring or spinning up their own ALSPs. This concept of an outside non-law firm legal services provider was in many ways promulgated by the need to invest in technology, and the issue being that law firms can't raise money. You can't have non-lawyers investing in a firm. Developing technology takes a significant capital infusion. Right. So how do you do that? You create an entity that's in this industry that can raise money, that is a Delaware C Corp or what have you. It is a traditional entity that investors understand, know, appreciate, and are comfortable with, and that can ethically, by not being a law firm, because it's literally a separate entity, take on the capital necessary to develop the technology be able to do these things. So some of them are directly related. There's a number of big international firms in particular that have spun out their own ALSPs that build technology that is largely proprietary to their ecosystem. And then there are other sort of independent ALSPs that are, again, often doing the same thing, where their primary method for competing in the space and providing their value is the tech. It's the underlying tech that they're able to leverage.
Awesome. Wow. This has been very, 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 very interesting. A total different topic of conversation that we've had on the Meet the Attorney episodes that we've run thus far. How can people get a hold of you?
Yeah, so I'm if you are a Web3 crypto person, you're probably on Telegram, so you can find me at David Lopez-Kurtz. I am aggressively doxed. I'm easy to find. You can find my BSL email is david@bsl.group. Feel free to send me an email right there. My law firm email is david.lopez-kurtz@dinsmore.com. Those three are a great way of getting a hold of me. Also find me, I'm on Twitter, reluctantly but necessarily, at Lopez-Kurtz. And you can also find my Substack. That if I think I forget the URL, but you Google me and find it. Where if you want to see my musings on Web3 happenings and technology, and I think there's going to be more about AI coming up here soon. You can find there. I'm try to post at least once or twice a week, but it all depends on how many podcasts I do.
Oh, okay, awesome. So, So you mentioned Twitter. That's funny. I think you're the first attorney that I've interviewed that's on Twitter. So
it's meeting clients where they're at, right? Meet your customers where they're at, and that's why being on Telegram is important for me. Being accessible in that way is important to me because that's what's important to my clients. And so I met them where they're at, and I want to be able to see what they see and operate the way they do and speak the way that they do, because I think something that lawyers forget is that we're service providers.
Right.
This is a service industry. It is our job to make hiring us and working with us as easy as possible for our clients, not the other way around. We're not in an ivory tower. There's nothing inherently, special about the practice of law, other than the fact that supply and demand, there's fewer of us, particularly in more specialized areas, than there is demand. And that's why it gets expensive. But still, providing a good client experience, I think, is really, really important. And at the end of the day, the number one thing you hear back from clients that frustrates them about the legal practice is lack of communication. And so I aim to be as communicative as I can while still, sleeping sometimes.
Sometimes. Out of curiosity, well, first of all, before I say that, I'm going to put all of those links on the show notes. Now, out of curiosity, do you I'm assuming you service the whole entire U.S., correct? Not just Cincinnati, Ohio.
I do, yeah. I mean, the vast majority of my clients are coastal or international. It helps that securities law is federal law, so that covers the U.S. So if they're raising money, that moves there. And one of the nice things about being at the law firm that I'm at is that Dinsmore is a national law firm. We have offices from Southern California up to Boston, Massachusetts, and everywhere in between. So we're able to handle a lot of matters internally without needing to look outside. But that goes back to the idea of pulling together the team that you need. So making sure that I'm active in attorney networks on a national and international basis, of being able to refer clients to where they need to be, or pulling together local experts, local subject matter experts, local counsel when necessary, is another very important piece of the puzzle of getting the right people and trying to take some of the frustrating vetting out of the process for clients. Mm-hmm. That's one of the things. It's like, how do I find the right person? Or I finally found you and you're telling me I need to go talk to somebody else. Well, hopefully I can refer you to somebody that I know, that I trust, that I've worked with before, and we can build that team so that we can focus on what you want to focus on, which is whatever business goal you have in mind.
Exactly. Awesome. Well, this has been really, really great. Thanks for coming. I know you're a really busy man. I'm going to let you go. But before I do, is there anything I did not ask you that you think will benefit the audience?
No, I just wanted to, thank you for the opportunity to speak to a different audience than I've had the chance to speak to before. I have a tendency to speak on legal stuff to legal people who already knew they were going to be focusing on that. And so this is a little bit different for me. So I really appreciate that. And the one piece I'll throw out there with the necessary lawyer on a podcast asterisk of, I am not at this point your lawyer, so none of this constitutes legal advice. But I will say, if I could give one piece of advice, from business advice to business people who are listening to this, is don't be afraid of reaching out to counsel. And if you're afraid of reaching out to your lawyer right now, you probably have the wrong lawyer. There are other ones there, lawyers who are used to working with business people, entrepreneurs, and who are flexible and who want to meet you. Not just are willing to, want to meet you where you're at and to build with you and grow with you and be part of your team. There's a reason that lawyers are called counselors. And if you haven't found one that feels that way to you, find one. They're out there. It's not just me. This isn't a plug for me. This is a plug for a younger generation of lawyers who are coming up, who look at practicing law in a little bit of a different way. So don't be afraid. Reach out there, make connections, and I think that you'll be better off for it.
That is awesome advice. I'm glad I asked that question. For some reason, something tells me that someone needed to hear that. So reach out to David, folks. I am going to. He's an awesome guy. As you can see, he's very knowledgeable. He's into technology. So am I, and so should you, because that is the world to come. So with that, I'm going to put an end to this episode. This has been Frank Deming, the local business guy, and you've just been blessed by the David Lopez-Kurtz. Take care, everyone. Until next week.
Thanks for listening to another episode of Marketing Solutions for Local Law Firms, the podcast that provides you with all the latest digital marketing tools, tips, and strategies you will need to implement in order to stay ahead of your competition. If you would like to know more about the topic we discussed in the show today, reach out to Frank and his team at 888-416-7752 and schedule a discovery call with one of the marketing consultants. If you'd like to be a guest on our show, send an email to podcast@lbmsllc.com and we will put you on the schedule. With that being said, until next week, make it a successful digital marketing day. Peace out.